and gentlemen, will you please welcome to the stage Guillaume Trotin.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina, for having me here. Thanks to your wonderful team who has been very supportive. Yeah, I should maybe move on to the next. How does this thing work? How to survive as a gallerist? That's a very challenging question. Actually, it's not just about myself. It's also how do I enable my artists, the people who I work with, to survive as well. Funding, yesterday and again today, has been quite a big question in the conference, and this is my little contribution to actually answer that question. Before I start, I want to explain who I am. I actually come from the business industry. I have no background in art. I don't think actually that this is a problem. I always thought that this was an advantage, because not coming from an industry gives you sometimes a different eyes on things and maybe a more honest and unbiased vision. As I said, we do not have an academical background, but we do everything we want with love, passion, dedication. And I think this is really important when you start a project like a gallery, to start from that angle and not to start from a monetary perspective. This comes later. We're professional, we're not just dealers. That means for me as a gallerist working hand in hand with my artists, and I know all of them personally. I work mostly with people I know. Very often people ask me, how do you choose your artists? Actually, we came to a situation where it's also the artists that choose us, and we work mostly by recommendation and co-optation. And I often say we're craftsmen. That means we are friends and family business. And that is very important for me to do it that way, because we want to be authentic. And this is, you know, this is not a job you do if you want to make money fast. This is a job you do with passion and dedication. And it's just easier to work with people you know, you trust, and with people who trust you in return. The art gallery paradox, that slide actually comes from a very controversial book from Magnus Resch, who has been extremely criticized, but who has the merit of trying to put to give a little bit of theory to our job. And I think this really summarizes the paradox we face, because a gallery is also a company. We need to survive. We need our artists to survive. So of course we have economic goals. We have artistic goals, because if you ask me what is the reason why do I run a gallery, I think it's a very powerful medium to express ideas, visions, and especially with the program that we have, we try to address certain questions, and art is a wonderful medium to get people to think, and especially street art and urban art, because if you go to a gallery, a museum, an institution, you already put yourself in a certain mindset to experiment art, and then you're already biased, whereas when you experience art in the street, you did not plan to see this stencil or that installation, and it reached out to you in a much more unexpected way and can provoke a different reaction, I believe. As a gallery, we also have social, ethical goals. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the crowd that come to our happenings or openings is not necessarily here because of the art. They're here because it's a social event, and that's okay. But how do you cope with that? How do you cope with that audience who actually just come to make the bar empty? How does the artist feel about this kind of crowd? How can you handle all of these different paradox is also what I'm going to try to answer. This is a quote that really got me furious when I saw it, because since I do this job, I hear so many people saying business is a dirty word. Actually, I don't believe that. I think if you, and then again, to answer the questions yesterday about the funding, one of the key for artists to be independent is to sell their work. And then they do not need to compromise with brands. They do not need to run after the grants and be in this insecurity. So I wrote this letter to Anne, Anne Kebles is one of the oldest galleries from Germany. Her gallery was founded in 1904. So, of course, she sees things in a very different perspective than us, who started in 2009. And that is one of the things that sometimes really get me upset when I hear these people coming from the art industry for 100 years or 150 years. You know, if you want to start today, there is no other way than to look at it from a business perspective, because a gallery, essentially, and that's the main difference with a museum, a gallery is a shop. So how do you sell works? How do you get your enterprise to be successful so that your artists are independent and successful as well? Because the difference between a gallery and museums and most institutions is we don't get funding. Actually, my job, sometimes I say I'm a fundraiser for vandals and activists, you know? Like, I'm the guy in the background that organizes the business so that Jordan can do what he does, so that Vermibus can do what he does. And this is what I like about my job. Is there a model for a successful gallery? No, I don't believe in it. I really believe the most important galleries invent their business model. If you try to copy someone, it's not going to work. If you try to read a book, marketing books, I read tons of marketing books in my career, trying to apply the Boston Consulting Group matrix to the gallery business or the art world simply does not work. So I think it's good to have a business background because it gives you certain grounds. And then the question is, how do you create something that is different from what already exists, that will get people excited? You know, when I ask my clients, why do you buy from me and not from certain of my competitors? They say, well, first of all, we buy your eyes, and second, we want to be surprised. And it's extremely important nowadays to surprise people, because all of the collectors that we all try to reach to, they have so many solicitations. They're invited to so many openings that you really need to propose something different in order to get their attention. However, and this is not magic miracles, this is my small contribution to try to answer the question. There are some ground principles that can help you be more successful, and I'm going to go through them one by one. First of all, stay cool, step back, breathe. As I said in the beginning, that is not the job that's going to make you a millionaire in a few years. Actually, when I started, I met several consultants who scared me, but once you know what is a reality and once you accept it, you feel much more confident about it. Truth is, if you run a commercial gallery, what I call the decoration, it's going to take you 5 years to break even, because this is a job where it takes so much time to get a clientele, to get a proper roster of artists, that it cannot happen in a day. And if you have more ambition, it's going to take you 10 years. That sounds long. Actually, Open Walls is now 8 years old, so we're almost getting there. And I swear it really exactly happened how this guy predicted. Yeah? Another thing is lovers will love, haters will hate. This is, I guess, true in many, many industries. What I wanted to say is, don't be afraid to show things that people will consider ugly. You know, like very often I see young galleries doing compromises on their program because these maybe will sell better, or oh no, we don't want to show that because nobody's going to accept it. Actually, if you want to be successful, you need to step back, breathe, and trust in what you're going to show. And that's okay if you're the only person that believes in this artist at that moment. At some point, somebody else will notice it. And I'm speaking from experience. We have shown positions where people were like, what the heck, really? You want to show that in an art fair? It's never going to work. Well, guess what? It did. Program is extremely important. The program is your identity. And this is something very personal, because how can you sell, how can you present the work of an artist you personally don't believe in? That's why our job is so personal, because we're not selling products, we're selling individuals. We're selling the work of individuals. And if you don't envision, and if you don't really feel that what this artist does is very, very important to you, it's never going to work. And personal vision. This is really key, because a gallery at some point also becomes a brand. Again, another dirty word, but a very important word, because as the competition grows, you want to be visible in the market. And the sharper is your program, the more visibility you will have. Keep overheads very low. Ooh, yeah. We did some mistakes. You know, like you have a very successful show and then you feel like, yes, we're gonna rock it. But guess what? The next few months, you're not gonna sell shit. And you don't understand why. And everybody tells you, yes, it's market perspective, blah, blah, blah. Doing this job for 8 years, I've learned to live with it and to stay cool and to stay calm and to step back. But the key is to keep your overheads as low as possible. Pay the artist first. This is the golden rule. Because I've heard so many stories of galleries or art projects that seemed extremely successful. You see it in the press, in the papers, everything looked nicey-nicey. And then you found out the artist never got paid. But as the art world is a small world, if you behave that way, you're not going to last very long. And I can tell you from our stories, we started, I mean, we have the luck, we're in Berlin, yeah, where in 2009, you could get a nice retail space for €3 per square meter. This makes certain things possible. But then again, at some point, even at €3 per square meter, it was not viable. Because the rent is part of it. The promotion is another big cost. The production, if you have certain ambitions, I mean, if you want to work like the videos we show, which is a little bit more than just a white cube, this costs a lot, and these costs add up. And then we said, okay, what can we do to change that pattern? And for 2 years, we operated the gallery from home, which I swear, in terms of sales, best time ever. Because you put the client, that's also what I meant by you need to reinvent your industry, you need to think forward in terms of concept and in terms of marketing concepts. How do you differentiate? If you invite people to your home, they will sit on your sofa, you will make them a coffee, and you're going to have a conversation. And then you create this intimate link with a collector. You create a conversation, you start a discussion. And a lot of people looked at us and were like, really? A gallery in an apartment? It's never going to work. But it did. And then we moved on to the next step. This is actually a photo from Stadtbad Berlin, which was an abandoned swimming pool. Again, this is something that I guess was possible only in Berlin, to move in an empty building. This was crazy. Like, I moved into this building, for me it was like a big Playmobil, you know? You go, you find a room, and you're like, another room, and another room, and another room. Nice walls with a lot of texture and structure. And yeah, we just went for it. And that was the second step of the gallery. So what I mean is, as you develop, if you develop slowly, if you have an organic growth, keep your cost low, step by step, you can go higher, higher, higher. But don't rush. Think as a publisher. There was a question in the audience yesterday, I think this was from you, if I'm correct. Could that be? Somebody asking, how can an artist use technology to become more successful? I mean, we all know the problem with the press, yeah? You send press releases, press releases, press releases, you do press dinner, cafe, blah, 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 in the hope that at some point they will write about you. But they won't, because the way press works right now, it's advertising against editorial. Look at Graffiti Arts magazine, yeah? 1 page of ad, 1 page of editorial. So again, it's a matter of how do you break this pattern. And if you think as a publisher and create your own content, it's so easy nowadays, you know? WordPress, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever. If you start from the idea that you produce unique content, There are other people out there that will be interested in this content, and they will find you. You know, you're not alone. As a gallery, I'm not alone. Actually, I'm in Berlin, where the local market is nada. Sales in Berlin is 10% of our turnover, you know. But because we come from business industry, I did a lot of work for startups, I always had this technology advantage compared to competitors. And this is something, thinking as a publisher, you can adapt it to a gallery, to an artist, to whatever. This is the time we live in. If you believe in your content, shout it out there. Again, you're not alone. More people than what you think are interested in what you do. Online sales. Oh my God, another dirty word. 80% of the gallery website I visit are made of home, about, exhibition. They don't have even a simple catalog online. This is so retarded, you know? Online sales is 40% of the business. This is big, you know? And again, this is something so easy. WooCommerce, we started with a fucking big cartel shop, you know? Like what designers used to sell t-shirts. The first Open Walls website for 3 years was a big cartel platform, which cost €39 per month. Not a big investment. Everybody can do it. And this is also, you know, a lot of our job is about relationship. So you're going to meet a collector in London, another one in Berlin, another one in Paris. How do you maintain this relationship over the time? How do you create repeat business after a fair? You know, having a blog, thinking as a publisher, having your catalog online actually enables you to keep this relationship. Art fairs. Oops. Again, another big theme. Art fairs are extremely expensive. It's not just the cost of registrations, which are enormous, it's also the logistics, it's the set design. And as a gallery, it's always this concern, okay, it's going to cost me 20 grand, that means I need to sell for 40. Really? Is that worth the money? Again, I'm speaking from my experience, but in 90% of the case, it does. Because if I'm sitting in the gallery, if I see 500 people in a month, it's a good month. If I go to an art fair, I'm going to see 5,000, 10,000 people over a weekend. And this is also what I'm trying to explain to some of my artists who are really reluctant to go to art fair because, oh my God, it's market, it's very dirty. No, we don't want that. I'm actually telling them, you know, this is much more exposure for your work. And it's exposure towards a crowd that is extremely qualified. And I wouldn't be standing here today if we would not have invested so much in art fairs. Which is why, thinking back about the cost, if you keep your operating costs really low, you can finance fair. You know, it's better to start a gallery from your own apartment, from an off location like the Aberdeen Pool, so you save on the rent, and what you save on the rent, you put it on fairs, because fairs drive business. Another little trick from myself, this is just personal recommendation, solo shows works 10 times better than fairs, you know. Just put yourself in the shoes of the visitors. Art Fair Cologne, 150 exhibitors with booths from 40 to 120 square meter. Everybody hangs from floor to bottom. The visitor goes da 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 da, and then they're dizzy. They're just dizzy. There is too much work. When you come and when you have the balls to do a solo show, people are like, ah, cool, I can breathe. I can actually see the work. I can actually put myself in the mind of this artist and try to understand what he wants to say. And I know this is, again, something that is contra-intuitive, because especially towards young galleries, like, I'm also a curator for fairs, and I see things sometimes where I'm like, boys, please, this is impossible. And I'm trying to educate them to say, like now at Berliner Liste, we have very, very strict hanging regulation. It's minimum 75 centimeter between each piece, no Petersburger, and we decide on the lighting. which is challenging, you know, because these people are paying to be here. So how can we, as curator, tell them, no, you don't do that? Actually, what we do is we explain them that presentation is extremely important, and that less is more. There are some photos from my first art fair that I deleted from my computer because I was so ashamed of what I did. So again, always step back, reconsider, change the rules. Solo shows and fairs, this is key. Professional management, another dirty word. Oh my God, so many dirty words. Actually, being professional, even in the art industry, is very important. And this is something museums and institutions do since decades, and that's working pretty well for them. Particularly in Berlin, you have a lot of these loosey galleries when you never know when is it open, will it be open. So you come, you show up at the door, and it's like door is closed. Nobody knows why. It's also about, you know, like I always say, we have two types of clients. Collectors are clients, artists are clients. They also expect and demand from us. And you need to be professional in your relationships. You need to have regular meeting, plans, strategy. This is very, very important, because in the end, this is what sets you free to have more creative freedom. If you have a strong timeline, if you have a strong plan, then a lot of questions are already answered, you know? Then you can speak about more about the creative side, because everything else is organized. Another thing that is important is to think, I often say open wall is a medium, because I like this idea of I see my program as an army, and we have something to achieve, and we stand for certain aesthetics and for certain language. It's also important to think in terms of branding, because a brand is something in, whether you like it or not, this is the world we live in. Yeah, this gives you visibility, this gives you legibility, and that's not even so dirty, because there's actually a lot of artists that are pretty famous and very successful that use basic branding techniques. Everlasting multitasking, this is my life. As everybody in Berlin, I have a lot of different jobs. The thing is, as I said earlier, some shows will work, some shows will not work. But I'm the father of a 3-year-old child. I need to pay my rent every month. I need to pay the school every month. I cannot have months where a certain amount of revenue is not coming. So a good way to cope with that is to say, you know, sales curve, up, down, another sales curve, up, down. But if you add all of them, then you manage to get something which is more like this and which is a little higher in terms of revenue. The other thing is multitasking is good for networking. My job as a curator for Stadtbad or Berliner Liste enables me to meet with other colleagues, to meet with artists, to meet with other curators. And out of all this discussion, there's always something that comes out. This is how you create a network. I mean, this is how I create a network. I'm not a very social person. I don't go to social events, but work is somehow my social event. And this is really key. Being an active part in a network is how you will. How did I get in contact with Tina? Through Monica. How did I get in contact with Jordan? Through another artist, you know? Like every little piece of what you do can bring you somewhere, can bring you in a higher position. Strengthen your relationship with your artist and become their agent. 10 minutes? We are working with emerging artists, which means we do a lot of work. This is a shitloads of amount of work. That's what we do, and it takes a lot of time until it pays off. Because despite what, you know, this is also part of the gallery paradox. Like everything we do looks nice and shiny. You have no idea. Like sometimes I hear people, they think I live like a king. This is this is not the case. This is the image we send out because we are in an industry where you need to send out this image to be successful somehow. Or, you know, like who will buy expensive artwork from a broken dealer? Nobody. Yeah. Another point is, and I had this discussion yesterday with an artist in the audience, she said, it's so difficult for an artist to work alone. I'm working 15 hours a day because I need to work on my paintings, I need to work on my communication, on the logistics, blah, 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 blah. This is a lot. And that's what I wanted to say by the obligation to produce alienates the patient to create. As an artist, and I saw that with some of the artists from my program, they were spending so much time like thinking, do I do this show in the gallery in London? Should I do these group shows? Should I do this? And I was like, Misha, why do you ask yourself these questions? Let me handle it. It's better for me and it's better for you. It's better for me because I really believe the more, like the stronger is the relationship with the artist, the better I can do my job, because then I have a complete control on everything. I know how many pieces are available on the market, where, at which price. This is very important. And then Misha realized, actually this is pretty cool, and that only cost me 10%, which is affordable, and which enables him to focus on what is important and relevant, creating relevant artworks. There are two books I would recommend, and these are two very different angles. One is written by a journalist from Flash magazine, the other one by a businessman. That's the thing, there is very, very few literature available. When I started this adventure with Elodie, we really had no idea of what we were doing. We started with a lot of guts and good feeling, but the amount of literature that was available for us to learn, how do you run a gallery, there was nothing. It's really a world where all rules are hidden and clear and obscure, and you don't know where to start from. So if I can give you two tips for books, these are the two that I highly recommend. And then never forget, I spoke a lot about business, but running a gallery is not just a business, it's a life. This is a lot of commitment, this is a lot of responsibility, this is at the same time super exciting. I mean, I've done a lot of jobs in my life. This is actually the first time I don't quit after 2 years. There's many reasons why I like my job, but also because it's so diverse. I do DIY, I do accounting, I do management, there's never a single day that is the same. And I personally find it very, very exciting. And also you get so much from the people you work with on an intellectual and personal level that this is really enrichissant and rewarding. Let's call it like that. So, talking about life, I've given you some marketing business practices. Let's see how we applied that to us. We have the luck that we are in Berlin. Berlin is a wonderful city which had a very heavy history, but this is a city where everything is possible, or at least where everything was possible, because the development started in 1990. And I remember when we decided to move to Berlin, actually we didn't know where we wanted to move. Like, I looked at the map of Europe and I was like, okay, London, it's cool, but for my generation it's too late, everything is already in place and it's too expensive and it's too crazy, blah blah blah. Paris is a museum, Barcelona too small. And then Berlin was there on the map. This photo is from 1990, as well as this photo, 1990, Berlin Mitte. I don't know if some of you are familiar with this area, but this is now like Soho in Berlin. And this is where the gallery is based now. This is Tacheles, one of the most important squat and artist-led project in Berlin. This is also from 1990. So Berlin, because it started from a ruin, is a particular city. It's a city where space, until recently, was not a problem. If you would come to Berlin in 2010 with a good idea, not even a lot of money, like a few $1,000, you could get things started. And that's what drove us to Berlin. And then when we arrived in Berlin, we saw the multitude of little street art pieces. Like the beauty of Berlin in 2008 and 2009 was, because now everybody's into muralism, you know, it's a little bit like who has the biggest dick, now it's who has the biggest mural. Because you don't get any publication unless you paint something that is 20 meter times 50 meter. But is that really street art? Is that really what it is about? To me, it's more about these encounters in the street. And what really led me to open a street art gallery was that I knew nothing about art. I was actually afraid of contemporary art because it's some kind of very elitist and not easy to approach. And then we came to Berlin and we saw, this is a piece from Alias that I used to see on my way to work every day. And then we started to have already some kind of a relationship with some of these artists. And we said, there is something happening here, you know? And then we met these artists and they were all like, you know, you ask, how do you live? How's life? Everything cool? They're like, yeah, I live with Artsphere. Artsphere is this German system that if you don't have a job, basically you get 400 euro per month and sometimes if you're lucky an apartment. And I was like, really? That's the reality of your life? Is there and they were like, yeah, you know, what we do, nobody's really interested. And we saw then a big opportunity. We said, actually, this content is so relevant. Let's try to create a gallery around it. And everybody in 2008, 2009 in Berlin, I swear, were like, street art gallery, it's never going to work. Street art belongs to the street. And it's extremely difficult to take something from the street into the white cube. There are ways. So, like, and I swear I never showed graffiti on canvas. I will never show graffiti on canvas. I think graffiti on canvas do not belong to a gallery. Graffiti belong on a train or on the street, and if you want to show it in a gallery, you show photos, that's fine. So we never really compromised. The other beauty of Berlin is that the scene is very diverse. It's not just stencils, it was not at that time big murals. There's always been a lot of ad busting, which is something we really go for. And then we found Stadtbad, an abandoned swimming pool, 25,000 square meters, which was the last living example of what I call the Berlin business model. The Berlin business model is, remember the photo with Arun? At that time, artists and creative would move into a building, reconnect the electricity, make a club in the basement, a gallery in the Erdgeschoss, and ateliers on top. And this is exactly what this place was about. We had the boiler room and a very, very big club in the basement, the gallery on the street level, and 50 ateliers on top. What I really liked about this space is that, again, funding. If you are able to create a little economy around culture, you don't need funding. We run that space for years. We never get a cent from the city or the European Union or whatever. No, they gave 20,000 bucks in the beginning to realize this tape mural. Sorry. But we managed to sell our content. We managed to create occasions and events for people to come, and they would come to a show, drink a beer, buy a little poster. We did workshops. We actually did more than just putting art on display. And I think this was also very key, because the way people consume art nowadays is buying paintings, it's a very little part of it. You have to propose an experience, and that's really what this place was about. This is one of my favorite installations, No Money, No Art. We did this when the former mayor of Berlin quitted his job as a celebration. Because we were supposed to get eventually a big funding from the space, and that never happened. And this is really the kind of installation you can only do if you have the right economic model around it, you know, like there's nothing to sell. Yeah, it's about making a statement. From Stadtbad, this wonderful location was shut down by the city last year in May. It's about a year now. The question was, how do we move from 25 square meter, working 80 hours a week? You know, I'm very happy and proud I've done it, but I'm also quite happy that this is over, because this was really exhausting. And then we said, okay, how do we evolve? What is the next step for us? And the next step was to do something much more classic in the very heart of Berlin Mitte. And it's important that this happen in the end of a travel, of a story, you know. If we would have started with this, we would have failed, because we didn't have at that time the finances to pay this rent. We did not have the artists to show in the scene of Berlin Mitte, where you compete with the top German gallery. And that's what I like you to get out of my speech. Running a gallery, it's alive, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience and dedication. And it's important to take your time and not to rush, and to do the right choices at the right time. And this is how you become successful. Next, this is the next project I'm working on. Because the white cube, it's nice and funny, and it's a nice space, but when you are used to run a big location, you know, sometimes you're like, I want to do something big. Yeah. So we're going to turn Kraftwerk, which is a former electric factory, in the biggest art fair of Berlin. This is 250 exhibitors. This is happening in September, and this is very exciting, because everything in Berlin is alternative, and we are proposing a new format where we actually focus much more on artists than on galleries. We want to show artists directly without, you know, bypassing the classic system. So everybody hates us. The official art week is like, you're the enemy. But I truly believe in it, and I know, because we are in Berlin, this is going to work, because we have the chance to be in a city where, if you're different, people will like you even more. So, this is my conclusion. I'll let you read it. And I hope you understood that you need business skills, and it's okay to come from the business, and it's totally, I don't think there's any of my artists that would complain that I come from this perspective. Actually, I think they appreciate that. But it's not just that. And this is the beauty of this job, and I really encourage all of you, if one day you have a chance to do something and to bring your contribution to this scene, do it. It's really cool. Thank you.